Hello, my name is Matt Cooper, and I want to tell you about my story and how God is using me in church planting missions. So, a bit about myself. I grew up in a small town, just outside a small town, called Pontotoc, Mississippi, there in the northern part of the state. It was during my childhood at age 11. I gave my life to Christ, and it's amazing how He's been using me ever since. I grew up there. I attended a local community college for a couple of years, and then I transferred where I graduated from Mississippi State University in 2014. And it was just where I transferred is when I answered God's call to ministry in any shape, form, or capacity of how He would use me. And it was pretty interesting. While I was a senior, I began serving as youth director at Kilmichael Baptist, which was about an hour or so from the school. Worked there for a couple of years, and it was also during that time I began my seminary studies at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. So after a couple of years, I went to Tifton, Georgia, to serve as a youth ministry intern for about a year, and eventually God called me back home in 2017, or back to Mississippi, to serve as student pastor and associate pastor here at Thompson Baptist Church in Smithdale, just outside Macomb, Mississippi, in southwest Mississippi, for a little over 4 years now. During that time, I wanted to have a mission partnership with somebody. I wanted to expand our horizons. So I emailed every state convention outside the South. Eventually, I came in contact with a guy named Sean Snyder out of Medford, Oregon, a church planter. He wanted to tell me about missions there as well as church planting opportunities. I took a deacon with me for a vision trip in 2018. I took a 7-person team to work with them in 2019 during spring break in different capacities. And also I took a few solo trips myself, whether to work with them on different things or just to have a change of scenery. And that obviously said a lot about what I thought of the place. The more I went, the louder I would hear God's voice and saying, I want you here. I want you to work with these guys. And then finally, earlier this year, 2021, I finally answered that. I finally told Thompson about it, and they've been nothing but supportive and loving about it all this time. And it's a real blessing for that. And so in August, I'll be moving to Medford, Oregon to take part in their church planting residency. I want to explain a little bit more about what that is. So a little bit about Medford as well as the church. So Medford is the county seat of Jackson County, Oregon. They're in the southern part of the state. Medford has a population of about 80,000. With all the other cities there in the county, it adds up to about 200,000 in the metro area. It's nestled within the Rogue Valley there in southern Oregon, in between the Siskiyou and the Cascade Ranges, or mountain ranges. And with its location, it has a much milder climate than most other places there in the state. It's a lot like weather here in Mississippi, except nowhere near as humid, which is totally different than what I'm used to. And then of course with its location, the coast, Crater Lake National Park, and even state line of California are all in short driving distance. So it's an interesting location. And so there's been a large population increase, which is great, but unfortunately it also adds to the crime rate. According to research that I found, Medford is considered the most dangerous city in Oregon. And I also saw where it's like the 3rd worst place in the country to raise your kids for all different reasons. Of course, a lot of that may change with the population diaspora of the coronavirus pandemic. So it's kind of interesting how that'll change or play out in the coming years. But then again, it's a great opportunity for ministry. Median property value is about $245,000. The median household income is about $47,500, and the average is about $58,000. About 19% of the population live below the poverty line. And back to the houses, the average rental of a 2-bedroom house is about $1,100. The average property taxes is about $2,000 to $3,000, 2 or 3, excuse me. There are only 3 Southern Baptist churches here in the city of Medford, which is roughly 1 per 26,000 people. Less than 5% of the Rogue Valley population are involved in church. 91% of the Pacific Northwest population do not have a relationship with Jesus. And then also, in the grand scheme of things, 90% of us evangelicals have never shared the gospel. That's concerning. Sadly, many churches in the area have no connection with their community. And it's for different reasons, whether it's an inward focus, wanting to retreat, or lost connection with younger generations, little to no discipleship training, all different reasons, and therefore most are dying. But Living Hope Church was planted in 2015. It's technically a replant of one of those churches, given new life, given a new name, given new purpose, yet still same community, same engagement. They have a team-oriented strategy to engage their community and train disciples and plant more churches. And also, there was a recent guy named Jordan who's trained in there, and now he's planted a college ministry there at the local university there in nearby Ashland. Currently, they're implementing an initiative called Multiply Northwest, in which they're partnering with other church plants to make disciples, plant more churches throughout the Northwest to reach 1% of the population. But with the exponential factor of sharing the gospel, making disciples per year for so many years, that 1% is going to grow. 1, 2, 4, 8, and hopefully eventually everyone will have heard and have a chance to respond to the gospel. And so one of the biggest plans for that is our church planting residency program, and that's my role in what I'll be doing, taking part in that to be trained as a church planter or a replanter or a missional leader. At the same time, I'll serve as a member of Living Hope Church and work in different capacities. With my experience, I'll probably do a lot with the praise team and probably help a lot with the youth, just because I love that. It's fun and it'll be great. It'll be a way for me to bless them with my talents. And then, of course, from there, it's a 1 to 2 year residency. And then after that, who knows? There are some churches that are working with them to take in pastors. But it'll be interesting to see how things go. It's a bit of an unknown, especially in the times that we live in. But I'm stepping out on faith to leave the comfortable South to go and be trained as a church planter. And therefore, I have faith that God's going to take care of me, and God can and will use me to reach people, just as He can and will use you too. And I'm overjoyed at the possibility of us working together and partnering with one another to carry out the Great Commission and thus take the gospel to all nations and all corners of the earth. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Take care, and God bless.